Welcome to Business Recipe. Every business has a recipe. Here's theirs. Today's recipe, the voice that kept you company. It is 1977. A radio station owner in St. Petersburg, Florida, has a problem. An advertiser owes him money he will never collect. And instead of cash, the man offers 112 electric can openers. Avocado green. $9.95 each. The station owner tells his disc jockey to put them on the air and see what happens. 1 hour later, every single can opener is gone. Lowell Bud Paxson stares at an empty box and understands something that will take the rest of America 40 years to figure out. People don't call in to buy a can opener. They call in because they're lonely. And if you can make them feel less alone, you can sell them anything. That accident in 1977 became a machine that ran for 40 years on a fuel nobody named, American isolation. Here's the recipe. The ingredients were captive cable audiences, parasocial hosts trained to feel like friends, and 35 million Americans who kept the TV on for company. The method was 24 hours of live broadcasting that never asked you to change the channel because you had nowhere else to go. The result was a $12.5 billion empire. And then the cable subscribers left. And the empire didn't just shrink, it collapsed under $6.6 billion in debt, leaving behind a question nobody in retail wanted to answer. What do you sell when loneliness was the product all along? The first ingredient was an accident that nobody was supposed to scale. Bud Paxson's radio station in Florida was struggling. His advertiser had 112 can openers and no cash. His disc jockey had an afternoon to fill. When the phones lit up, Paxson didn't see a clearance sale. He saw a transaction that looked nothing like retail. The person buying a $9 can opener wasn't shopping. They were calling. That distinction is everything. 9 years later, Joseph Segal understood the same thing from a different angle. Segal had founded the Franklin Mint, a mail-order operation that sold commemorative coins to people who wanted to feel connected to something larger than their living room. On June 13, 1986, he launched QVC from Westchester, Pennsylvania, with a structural advantage nobody in television had ever used before. He didn't buy his way onto cable. He gave cable operators equity stakes in QVC in exchange for carriage. Comcast's founder Ralph Roberts took that deal. 58 cable systems in 20 states signed on for the first broadcast. 7.6 million homes guaranteed on launch night. Year 1, $112 million in sales. The second ingredient was the cable bundle itself. In the 1980s and 1990s, cable television was not a luxury. It was the only way to get more than 4 channels. When you paid your cable bill, you got QVC whether you asked for it or not. The channel was on the dial. At 2 a.m., when you couldn't sleep, it was there. That guaranteed placement was not just distribution, it was captivity. The third ingredient was a specific kind of American. QVC's core customer was a woman over 50, not because the channel targeted her by preference, but because she was home. She might be widowed. She might live alone in a house that had grown too quiet. By the mid-1990s, QVC was reaching nearly 100 million American homes. It was not reaching 100 million buyers. It was reaching 100 million people who kept the television on for company. Here is how you cook a companionship business and disguise it as retail. QVC's hosts were trained with one operating principle: never talk to a crowd. Talk to a single friend. Sean Killinger, one of QVC's most recognized on-air personalities, described her approach in her own words. "I want you to love that story about my husband manscaping because I want you to be my friend." That is not a sales pitch. That is an intimacy offer. Hosts mastered product scripts first, then they replaced product language with personal stories. They shared arguments with their spouses. They discussed their children's school projects. They laughed. They confessed. They created the texture of friendship. A 2011 study in psychology and marketing surveyed 295 TV home shoppers aged 60 and older and found that loneliness directly increased parasocial interaction with hosts. And that parasocial interaction directly increased purchase satisfaction. Not product quality, not price, the relationship. QVC ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The host was always there. The same reassuring voice on a Tuesday afternoon, The same warm laugh at 11 p.m. when the house felt too quiet. This was not accidental. QVC programmed specifically against silence, against the specific vulnerability of people who had nobody to talk to. And then there was the urgency engine, a countdown clock, an item of the day that sold out and would never return. The script wasn't, "Here's a nice sweater." The script was, "Here's proof that someone thought of you. Here's a reason to pick up the phone." By 2020, QVC and HSN combined were generating $12.5 billion in revenue. 91% of that revenue came from repeat buyers spending an average of $1,400 a year each. That is not a customer loyalty rate. That is a dependency rate. The recipe produced extraordinary results. On paper, QVC and HSN combined reached peak revenue of $12.5 billion in 2020. QVC alone had 15.1 million unique customers in 2021. The company's operating income that year showed a profit. The brand was known in nearly every American household over a certain age, but look at what was happening underneath. Cable companies were losing subscribers. More than 5 million in 2024 alone. The homes where QVC played in the background, guaranteed, unchallenged, invited in by default through the cable bundle, those homes were cutting the cord. A cable bill that averaged $96 per month in 2019 had climbed to $147 by 2022. Streaming offered Netflix, Disney Plus, and dozens of alternatives for a fraction of that price. The captive audience was escaping, and as it escaped, QVC's numbers moved in one direction only. In fiscal year 2024, operating income swung from a $590 million profit the prior year to an $809 million loss, a $1.4 billion collapse in a single year. Revenue declined 8%. Costs did not. The company had been built for $12.5 billion in sales. It could not survive at $10 billion. Then on December 18, 2021, in the middle of the holiday season, a fire destroyed QVC's fulfillment center in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. It was the company's second largest, processing 25 to 30% of all U.S. volume. The total loss? $250 million. QVC decided not to rebuild. The company was burning in more ways than one. BGM DUCK, quieter, reflective tone. Before we go further, the strongest case for QVC deserves a full hearing. Counter-argument 1. QVC wasn't selling loneliness. It was selling convenience. The company gave homebound shoppers access to brands and demonstrations they couldn't easily find in stores. For women managing households, mobility-limited seniors, and people in rural areas without strong retail options, QVC solved a genuine access problem. The academic research on parasocial bonds doesn't prove exploitation. It proves that trust-based relationships produce satisfaction. That's what any good retailer builds. Counterargument 2. The debt is a capital structure failure, not a business model failure. QVC's $6.6 billion in debt traces to John Malone's Liberty Media acquisition in 2003 and the 2017 HSN merger, both financial engineering decisions, not operational ones. The operational business was still generating $9.2 billion in revenue as recently as 2025. Companies that generate $9 billion don't die from their products being bad. They die from their balance sheets. Both arguments are real, and both of them miss the same thing. The cable guarantee that made both the convenience and the leverage possible is gone. You can't restructure a balance sheet back to 100 million captive homes. The people who paid for QVC's recipe were not who the company reported in its filings. The official story, QVC served retail customers. The actual story, QVC served lonely people, and when it forgot that, it tried to pivot in the wrong direction at the wrong time. In June 2022, QVC launched something it called Project Athens, a 3-year transformation plan to refocus on women age 50 and older. VP of Brand Marketing Annette Dunleavy said out loud what the filings could only imply. Through the years, we've pivoted away from her to go after the shinier, sexier demographic. QVC had spent its growth years chasing younger customers who didn't need companionship as service and who had 5 other options. In doing so, it starved the customer who had kept it alive, the one for whom QVC wasn't a shopping channel, but a standing appointment. Between 2021 and September 2025, QVC lost more than 8 million customers. That's not a market shift. That's a community dissolving. A woman who had called in every Tuesday for 20 years, who knew the host's children's names, who had a favorite product slot, who kept the television on because the silence was unbearable. That woman's cable subscription ended, and she couldn't follow QVC to TikTok. She wasn't on TikTok. On April 16, 2026, QVC Group filed for Chapter 11 in the Southern District of Texas. The debt, $6.6 billion. The target, cut it to $1.3 billion within 90 days. CEO David Rawlinson told the court the company was uniquely positioned to compete and win in live social shopping. He wasn't wrong about the format. TikTok Shop is live shopping. QVC acquired nearly 1 million new customers there in 2025, but TikTok doesn't sell guaranteed captive audience slots. Every view on TikTok is contested. Every purchase is optional. That's what Bud Paxson understood in 1977 that TikTok can't replicate. The person on the other end of the line wasn't comparing prices. They were answering the phone because someone was calling. If this kind of analysis is what you're here for, subscribe to Business Recipe. This is the story the earnings calls don't tell. And here's the turn most analysts missed. The $6.6 billion in debt was not caused by the cord cutting. It was caused by a $7.9 billion acquisition in 2003 and a $2.1 billion merger in 2017, financial bets that assumed the captive audience was permanent. The isolation that QVC monetized was always rented, not owned. When the cable bundle died, the rent came due. 3 signs that tell you when a business is selling something it won't admit. Sign 1. When 91% of your revenue comes from repeat buyers spending $400 a year, you don't have customers. You have a dependency. Bud Paxson saw it in 1977 with the can openers. People didn't call once, they called back. Any business where the product experience produces an emotional need to return is not selling a product. It is selling the experience of not being alone. Sign 2. When a company pivots away from its core customer and then pivots back in crisis, the pivot back is not a strategy. It is an admission. Annette Dunleavy's 2022 quote, "We pivoted away from her," is a confession. QVC knew who it served. It chose growth metrics over that relationship for a decade. By the time Project Athens launched, cord cutting had already turned that relationship into a memory. Sign 3. When the debt traces to an acquisition premium, not to operational failures. Look at what the acquirer was paying for. John Malone paid $7.9 billion for QVC in 2003. He wasn't buying a retailer. He was buying a guaranteed toll road to 85 million captive homes. When the road closed, the toll stopped. The acquisition premium became $6.6 billion in unpayable debt. The toll road was always borrowed. You don't have to be in retail to use these signs. Any business that cannot explain its product without using the word relationship is probably selling something other than what it thinks it's selling. And the question worth asking, for any company that is scaled on captive attention, is whether the attention is still captive. Or whether, like QVC's 8 million lost customers, it just quietly walked out the door. Next week, another company that built an empire on something its customers desperately needed but never named, and what happened when the world noticed. If this video changed how you see business, subscribe to Business Recipe. We'll be here. Today's recipe, complete. So, what business should we crack open next? Drop the company name in the comments. We read them. If you want more case studies like this one, subscribe. New recipe every Tuesday.